There is a castle. In the center of your mind, picture a grand, imposing fortress. Its walls are thick, its towers reach for the clouds, and from its highest rampart flies the flag of a prosperous kingdom. This castle represents a business, a truly great business. Inside, its leaders are making smart decisions, creating wonderful products, and generating immense wealth for its citizens, who are its shareholders. But a castle, no matter how magnificent, is vulnerable. Out on the plains, there are marauding armies. Competitors. Barbarians who want to scale the walls, breach the gates, and plunder the treasury. They want to copy the products, steal the customers, and drain the profits. This is the natural state of capitalism. It is a relentless, bloody siege, and for most businesses, it is a battle they eventually lose. The walls crumble, the kingdom falls, and the wealth evaporates. But some castles never fall. They stand for centuries, repelling every attack, growing stronger with every passing year. They seem invincible, magical. What is their secret? It is not the height of their walls or the sharpness of their swords. It is something far more fundamental, something so powerful it makes the castle almost unconquerable. It is the moat, a wide, treacherous, shark-infested moat. This is the central metaphor, the genetic code of the greatest investor who has ever lived, Warren Buffett. For him, the entire art of long-term investing, the grand strategy behind a lifetime of wealth building, comes down to a single profound question: how wide is the moat? While the rest of the world, the frantic 99%, is mesmerized by the castle's latest paint job. The quarterly earnings report, the flashy new product announcement, the charismatic king giving a speech. Buffett is on the shoreline, studying the moat. He understands a fundamental truth that escapes almost everyone else. A company with a wide and durable economic moat can make mistakes, it can suffer through recessions, it can even have a mediocre king for a while, and it will still thrive. But a company with no moat can do everything right. It can have the most brilliant king and the most innovative products, and it will still eventually be overrun and destroyed by the competition. This is the final promise of value investing. It is a promise of peace of mind in a chaotic world. It is the shift from a speculator betting on the shifting winds of market sentiment to an owner, a proprietor of an indestructible business franchise. It is the key to true financial freedom, not the frantic kind that requires you to check stock prices every 5 minutes, but the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from owning a piece of a corporate castle so well defended that you can sleep soundly for decades, knowing your capital is not just safe, but compounding relentlessly within its impenetrable walls. Today, we are not just going to talk about this concept, we are going to deconstruct it piece by piece and build a powerful mental model that you can use for the rest of your life. We will explore the 5 great moats that Buffett looks for, the deep psychological principles that make them work, and the precise financial footprints they leave behind. This is the blueprint for finding the corporate castle. This is the art of identifying a competitive advantage so powerful that it borders on unfair. This is the masterclass in long-term investing. Our first pillar, the most elegant and perhaps most powerful type of economic moat, is the fortress built not of stone and mortar, but of pure thought and emotion. It is the intangible fortress, defended by the twin towers of brand power and intellectual property. An intangible asset is something you cannot touch, you cannot count, you cannot physically measure, yet it can be the most valuable thing a company owns. It is the idea that exists in the collective consciousness of billions of people, a mental shortcut that connects a symbol or a name with a promise of quality, consistency, and emotional satisfaction. To truly understand its power, we must travel back to a moment of corporate crisis, a blunder so colossal it has become the stuff of business legend, and witness how Warren Buffett saw not a disaster, but the ultimate proof of an unbreachable moat. The year is 1985. The Coca-Cola Company, the undisputed king of the soft drink world, is feeling the heat. For years, its rival Pepsi has been running the Pepsi Challenge, a series of blind taste tests where consumers consistently and infuriatingly preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. Coke's market share was slowly eroding. The executives in Atlanta, Georgia, grew nervous. They were men of data, of logic, of chemistry. The problem, they concluded, was the formula itself. And so, in a move of stunning corporate hubris, they decided to change it. On April 23, 1985, they retired the 99-year-old formula for Coca-Cola and introduced the world to New Coke, a sweeter, smoother beverage designed to beat Pepsi at its own game. On paper, it was a sound executive decision-making process. They had conducted over 200,000 taste tests. The data was clear. People preferred the new flavor. The launch was accompanied by a massive marketing blitz. What happened next was not a product launch. It was a cultural uprising. The American public reacted with a level of vitriol and outrage, usually reserved for fallen political leaders. It was a national trauma. Phone lines at Coca-Cola headquarters were flooded with tens of thousands of angry calls. Protest groups formed. People began hoarding old bottles of Coke, selling them on the black market like precious gems. One man in Texas drove to a local bottler and spent $1,000, his life savings, on cases of the original formula. The company had not just changed a drink, they had desecrated a sacred American icon. They had stolen a piece of people's childhoods, their memories of summer picnics and first dates. After just 79 days of relentless public outcry, the company capitulated. On July 11, 1985, a humbled and bewildered management team announced the return of the original formula, now branded as Coca-Cola Classic. The nation rejoiced. The stock price, which had faltered, began a climb that would create staggering wealth for decades to come. While the media and most of Wall Street saw this as a hilarious marketing fiasco, Warren Buffett saw something profound. He saw the most powerful demonstration of an intangible asset he had ever witnessed. A company had made a terrible product decision, insulted its entire customer base, and yet the customers did not abandon it. They demanded its return. They begged to be allowed to give the company their money again. Their loyalty wasn't to the chemical composition in the can, it was to the idea of Coke. It was an emotional bond, forged over a century of advertising, shared experiences, and cultural ubiquity. This, to Buffett, was the ultimate economic moat. It was a brand so powerful that it was immune to management error. A few years later, in 1988, as the market reeled from the Black Monday crash of 1987, Buffett saw his opportunity. While others were panicking, he was calmly and methodically investing over $1 billion into Coca-Cola stock, acquiring a stake of over 6% of the company. It was a massive bet, one of the largest in his career. He wasn't buying a soft drink company. He was buying a piece of the global mindshare, a permanent and profitable real estate in the hearts of billions. That investment would become one of the cornerstones of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio, a testament to the enduring power of an intangible asset. The psychological principle that underpins the power of a brand like Coca-Cola is known as the affect heuristic. This is a cognitive shortcut our brains use to make quick, efficient decisions. Instead of engaging in a deep, rational analysis of a product's features, price, and quality, we often default to a much simpler question: how do I feel about it? The affect heuristic dictates that if our feelings about something are positive, we tend to judge the risks as low and the benefits as high. Conversely, if our feelings are negative, we perceive the risks as high and the benefits as low. Coca-Cola has spent over a century and billions upon billions of dollars meticulously cultivating a positive affect. Their advertising rarely talks about the taste of the soda. It talks about happiness, friendship, family, celebration, and peace. Think of the iconic "I'd like to buy the world a Coke" ad, or the heartwarming polar bears. These are not product pitches, they are emotional conditioning. They are designed to weld the image of the red and white script logo to the most powerful positive emotions in the human experience. When a consumer stands in front of a beverage cooler, they are not conducting a financial analysis of price per ounce or a chemical analysis of sweetness profiles. They are faced with a choice between a familiar, happy feeling, Coke, and an unknown or less emotionally resonant alternative. The affect heuristic pushes them almost subconsciously toward the choice that feels good. This bypasses logic. It creates pricing power. Coke can charge a premium over a generic store brand cola, and people will happily pay it because they are not just buying carbonated sugar water, they are buying a small dose of that manufactured happiness, a sip of nostalgia. This is a moat that competitors find almost impossible to cross because you cannot reverse engineer an emotion with a better formula or a lower price. You are not fighting a battle of products. You are fighting a battle against a century of cherished memories. So how do we, as investors engaged in serious stock analysis, translate this into a practical, applied mental model? How do we build the blueprint for identifying these intangible fortresses? It begins with a shift in perspective. You must stop looking at customers as mere consumers and start seeing them as a tribe. Step 1. Search for signs of a tribe. Does the company have fans or just customers? Look for user-generated content, fan conventions, and online communities dedicated to the product. Think of the fierce loyalty of Apple users, the cult-like following of Harley-Davidson riders, or the passionate communities around video game franchises. These are not just brands, they are identity markers. Step 2. Investigate pricing power. This is the single most important test of a great business, according to Buffett. Can the company raise its prices year after year without losing significant business to competitors? A simple way to check this is to look at a company's historical financial statements. Look at the revenue growth and the gross margins over a 10-year period. If revenues are climbing and gross margins are stable or expanding, it's a strong indicator that they have the power to pass on inflationary costs and then some to their customers. A company without a moat has to eat those costs, crushing its profitability. Step 3. Analyze the marketing engine. A truly powerful brand, paradoxically, often needs to spend less on marketing as a percentage of sales over time. Its brand does the heavy lifting through word of mouth and cultural presence. Contrast this with a company that has to spend a fortune on promotions and advertising just to maintain its market share. That's not a brand, that's a treadmill. Look at the selling, general, and administrative (SG&A) expenses line on the income statement as a percentage of revenue. For a company with a powerful brand, you want to see this number be stable or decreasing over time, indicating efficiency and brand leverage. Step 4. Look for the legal armor of patents and regulatory licenses. This is the other side of the intangible coin. A pharmaceutical company with a patent on a blockbuster drug has a government-granted monopoly for a set period. A waste management company with the sole license to operate the landfill in a major city has a legal fortress. This type of moat is easier to identify through company filings and industry research, but it is crucial to assess its durability. How long until the patent expires? How secure is the license? This rigorous four-step analysis transforms the vague idea of brand into a concrete set of measurable criteria for your investment principles. Now, let's explore the antithesis, the path of the 99%. This is the world of the moatless business, the company built on the shifting sands of price competition. The vast majority of businesses live and die in this brutal landscape. Picture a small, independent consumer electronics company. Let's call them Innovatech. They design a decent smartphone. It has good features, a nice screen, and they price it aggressively, 20% below the latest models from Apple or Samsung. For a short while, they might see a spike in sales. Tech bloggers praise them as a plucky upstart. But their success is fleeting, and their position is perilous. They have no brand loyalty. Their customers are not a tribe. They are mercenaries, loyal only to the lowest price. The moment a competitor from China comes along and offers a similar phone for 5% cheaper, Innovatech's customers will vanish overnight. They are trapped. They cannot raise prices because they have no brand power to justify it. They cannot afford to invest heavily in research and development because their margins are razor-thin. They are constantly being squeezed from all sides. A slight increase in the cost of microchips, a fluctuation in currency exchange rates, a new tariff, any of these can wipe out their entire profit for the year. This is a business living on a knife's edge. It is a state of perpetual struggle. This is the fate of the company that competes on features and price alone. It's a race to the bottom, and the winner of that race is often the one who goes bankrupt last. The 99% of investors are drawn to these stories. They love the underdog, the potential for rapid growth. They buy the stock of Innovatech, hoping it will be the next Apple, ignoring the fact that it has no moat, no defense, no durable competitive advantage. And so, they watch in bewilderment as the stock price collapses when the inevitable competitive pressures mount. They have mistaken a flimsy tent for a fortress. The direct financial connection between an intangible asset moat and a company's value is profound and quantifiable. It manifests directly in the financial statements, creating a picture of health and durability that a moatless company simply cannot replicate. First, look at the gross margins. Gross margin is calculated as revenue, cost of goods sold, / revenue. It tells you how much profit a company makes on each dollar of sales before accounting for overhead costs. A company with strong brand power, like Coca-Cola or Nike, can command premium prices for its products, which are not significantly more expensive to produce than their generic counterparts. This results in consistently high gross margins, often in the 50, 60, or even 70% range. A company like our fictional Innovatech, competing on price, will have dangerously thin gross margins, perhaps 10 or 15%. This high gross margin is the financial fuel for everything else. It allows the company to spend more on research, marketing, and expansion, further widening its moat. Second, examine the return on tangible assets, ROTA. This is a metric Buffett loves. You calculate it by taking the pre-tax earnings and dividing it by the tangible assets of the business, like factories, inventory, and equipment. A business with a powerful brand is earning money not just from its physical assets, but from its intangible one. This results in a spectacularly high ROTA. Buffett once noted that See's Candies, another one of his iconic brand investments, required very little capital to operate. They had some stores and some kitchen equipment, but their true asset was the See's brand in the minds of consumers on the West Coast. This allowed them to generate tens of millions in profit from a tiny base of tangible assets, producing returns that were almost infinite. A commodity business like a steel mill requires massive ongoing investment in tangible assets just to stay in the game. Their returns will always be anchored to their heavy physical footprint. Finally, during an acquisition, this intangible value is made explicit on the balance sheet under the line item goodwill. When one company buys another for more than the fair market value of its net assets, the difference is booked as goodwill. It is, in essence, the price paid for the moat, the brand, the customer relationships, the intellectual property. A company with a balance sheet heavy with goodwill from smart acquisitions is a company that has been explicitly buying durable competitive advantages. By learning to read the financial story, you can see the invisible fortress of the brand translated into the hard numbers of superior profitability and wealth creation. We now turn to our second great economic moat, a defense that is less about seduction and more about entanglement. It is the moat of high switching costs, the golden handcuffs that lock customers in, making the act of leaving a product or service so painful, expensive, or complicated that they simply choose not to. While a brand appeals to the heart, switching costs appeal to the rational desire to avoid hassle and risk. They create a powerful inertia that becomes a fortress of recurring revenue. To fully grasp this sticky advantage, we must revisit one of Buffett's earliest and most daring investments, a moment when the entire financial world believed a corporate giant was on the verge of collapse. But Buffett, through his on-the-ground investigation, saw the unbreakable loyalty created by switching costs. The setting is late 1963. American Express, a pillar of the financial establishment, a company synonymous with trust and prestige, is facing an existential crisis. The source of the panic was a division of the company that had nothing to do with their famous charge cards or traveler's checks. It was a warehousing subsidiary, and one of its largest clients was the Allied Crude Vegetable Oil Refining Company, run by a charismatic fraudster named Tino De Angelis. De Angelis had devised a simple but brilliant scam. He would take out massive loans using his inventory of salad oil as collateral. The inventory was certified by American Express's warehousing division, giving the loans an ironclad seal of approval. The problem was, the salad oil didn't exist. His giant storage tanks were mostly filled with water, with a few feet of oil floating on top. When the fraud was discovered, Allied Crude collapsed, defaulting on loans worth what would be over $1.5 billion in today's money. Since American Express had certified the non-existent collateral, Wall Street assumed the company was on the hook for the entire amount, a sum that would wipe out its net worth and drive it into bankruptcy. Panic erupted. The stock, which had been trading at over $60 a share, plummeted to $35. The consensus was clear: sell, get out, American Express is finished. But a young Warren Buffett, then in his early 30s and running his small investment partnership in Omaha, was skeptical of the panic. He decided to do what he always did, his own research, what his partner Charlie Munger would later call, in the trenches, scuttlebutt. He didn't just read the annual reports, he went out to see the business for himself. He visited restaurants and travel agencies. He talked to merchants. He stood in the lobbies of banks and observed customers. He was looking for the answer to one question: was the salad oil scandal actually affecting the core business of American Express? What he found was astonishing. Nothing had changed. Merchants still proudly displayed the American Express accepted here signs. They told him they couldn't imagine dropping Amex because their most affluent customers used the card. Travelers still felt more secure carrying the iconic green traveler's checks than cash. He spoke to a competitor in the traveler's check business who, with a sense of weary resignation, admitted that his own company's product was just as good, but they couldn't break the public's habit and trust in American Express. Buffett realized that the company's true business, the charge card and the traveler's checks, had an economic moat built of habit and trust. For a customer, switching away from American Express was more than a minor inconvenience. It meant losing access to a network of merchants, giving up a symbol of prestige, and adopting a less trusted alternative. For a merchant, dropping Amex meant risking the loss of their best customers. The switching costs, both psychological and financial, were immense. He concluded that the scandal, while damaging, was a temporary flesh wound to a non-essential limb. The core business franchise was unharmed. Convinced of the moat's durability, Buffett aggressively invested 40% of his partnership's capital into American Express stock, a bet-the-farm decision. Within 2 years, the stock had tripled, netting his partnership a $20 million profit and cementing his reputation as a brilliant contrarian investor. He saw what others missed, the invisible but immensely powerful fortress of switching costs. The underlying psychological principle that makes switching costs so effective is a powerful combination of status quo bias and loss aversion. These are not weaknesses. They are fundamental features of human cognition, honed by evolution to conserve energy and avoid risk. Status quo bias is our innate preference for the current state of affairs. Any change from our baseline is perceived as an effort, a potential risk. We stick with our default cable company, our bank, our software, not necessarily because they are the absolute best, but because they are familiar. The effort required to research alternatives, fill out new paperwork, learn a new interface, and transfer data is often seen as a significant hurdle. Our brain, seeking efficiency, simply defaults to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This creates a powerful inertia that benefits the incumbent company. Then, layered on top of this, is the even more powerful force of loss aversion. Pioneering work by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed that, for the human mind, the pain of losing something is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. When a customer considers switching from a service they already use, they frame the decision in terms of potential losses. What if I lose my data during the transfer? What if the new service isn't as reliable? What if I miss a critical feature I've come to rely on? These potential losses loom large in their mind. The potential gains of the new service, a slightly lower price or a new feature, feel less compelling in comparison. The company with high switching costs isn't just selling a product, it's selling certainty. A competitor isn't just offering a better deal. They are asking the customer to take a gamble, to risk a certain present for an uncertain future. For most people, most of the time, that is a gamble they are not willing to take. This psychological 1-2 punch creates incredibly loyal, or at least incredibly inert, customers, which translates directly into a durable business. To transform this understanding into an applied mental model for quality investing, we need a blueprint for systematically identifying and evaluating switching costs. This is a core skill for anyone serious about how to analyze companies for the long term. Step 1. Map the pain of divorce. For any company you analyze, literally write down or flowchart the exact steps a customer would have to take to leave for a competitor. The more steps, the more complex, and the more time-consuming the process, the higher the switching costs. Consider a small business that runs its entire operations on Oracle's enterprise software. To switch, they would need to migrate decades of financial data, retrain their entire workforce on a new system, and risk catastrophic business disruption if the process goes wrong. The switching costs are monumental. Compare that to switching from one brand of coffee to another. The cost is zero. Step 2. Categorize the type of switching cost. They are not all created equal. There are procedural costs, like the effort of changing a bank account's automatic bill payments. There are financial costs, like the penalty fees for breaking a cell phone contract early. And there are relational costs, like losing the years of accumulated knowledge your trusted financial advisor has about your family's situation. Businesses that integrate multiple types of switching costs have the widest moats. A company like Apple, for example, combines procedural costs, learning a new operating system, financial costs, rebuying all your apps and media, and relational costs, leaving the iMessage ecosystem of your friends and family. Step 3. Analyze the customer churn rate. This is the ultimate quantitative measure of switching costs. Churn rate is the percentage of customers who stop using a company's service over a given period. A company with a very low churn rate, say below 5% annually, is demonstrating that its customers are locked in. This data can often be found in a company's annual reports or investor presentations, especially for subscription-based businesses. A consistently low and stable churn rate is one of the most beautiful sights in financial analysis, a clear signal of a durable competitive advantage. By following this 3-step process, you move from a vague feeling that a business is sticky to a rigorous, evidence-based assessment of its switching cost moat. Now, let us consider the antithesis, the path of the 99%, which is to invest in businesses with zero switching costs. This is the world of the transactional business, where every single day is a new battle for the customer's dollar. The classic example is a restaurant. A customer might love your restaurant. They might have a wonderful meal and excellent service. But the next night, they are completely free to try the new restaurant that just opened down the street. There is no cost to switching. Their loyalty is only as strong as their last meal. This creates a terrifying business environment. The restaurant owner must be perfect every single day. One bad review, one mediocre dish, one rude server can lose a customer forever. They are subject to the whims of fashion and changing tastes. The hot new bistro today is the empty, forgotten relic in 2 years. This business model requires relentless operational excellence and a huge slice of luck just to survive, let alone prosper. Another example is a retail clothing store that sells commodity items like basic t-shirts. The customer has dozens of options, both online and offline. They will simply go wherever the price is lowest or the location is most convenient. There is no bond, no lock-in. These companies live and die by promotions, sales, and a constant expensive marketing churn to attract new customers because they cannot rely on keeping their old ones. The 99% of investors are often drawn to these businesses, particularly in the retail and restaurant sectors. They invest based on their personal experience. I love eating there, so it must be a good stock, mistaking a good product for a good investment. They fail to ask the crucial question: what prevents the customer from going somewhere else tomorrow? They don't see the absence of a moat, and so they are surprised when the company's profits prove to be as ephemeral as the latest fashion trend. Their portfolio strategy becomes a revolving door of hopes and disappointments because they are investing in castles built on sand. The direct financial connection between high switching costs and a company's financial statements is one of the most powerful forces in wealth building. It creates a level of predictability and profitability that Wall Street values at a massive premium. First and foremost, high switching costs create recurring revenue. This is the holy grail of business. Instead of starting at zero every quarter, a company with locked-in customers starts with a large, predictable base of revenue that it knows will come in month after month, year after year. This is why software as a service, SaaS companies are valued so highly. Their subscription models, combined with the high procedural switching costs of their platforms, create a stream of income that is incredibly stable. In a company's financial filings, you should actively look for mentions of recurring revenue or subscription revenue as a percentage of total sales. The higher that percentage, the more durable the business. Second, it dramatically lowers the customer acquisition cost (CAC) relative to the lifetime value (LTV) of a customer. A business with no switching costs has to constantly spend money on advertising to replace the customers it loses. A business with high switching costs can acquire a customer once and then reap the profits from that customer for many years. A healthy business will have an LTV that is at least 3 times its CAC. A business with a powerful switching cost moat might have a ratio of 5:1 or even 10:1. This extraordinary efficiency means more cash can be returned to shareholders or reinvested to strengthen the business. Third, it provides significant pricing power. Once a customer is deeply integrated into your system, you can implement small, regular price increases that most customers will simply absorb rather than go through the pain of switching. This leads to expanding margins and revenue growth that is not dependent on constantly finding new markets. It is the financial equivalent of a ratchet. The revenue clicks upwards, but it rarely, if ever, clicks back down. By analyzing these 3 factors, the percentage of recurring revenue, the LTV to CAC ratio, and the evidence of consistent price increases, you can see the financial manifestation of the golden handcuffs, proving that the moat is not just a theoretical concept, but a powerful engine of long-term financial success. Our third pillar of the economic moat is a phenomenon of modern capitalism, a force so powerful it can create winner-take-all markets and turn businesses into virtual monopolies. It is the unstoppable chain reaction of the network effect. A business with a network effect becomes more valuable to each user as more users join the network. This is not a linear improvement, it is an exponential one. It creates a self-reinforcing feedback loop, a virtuous cycle that pulls in more users, which makes the service better, which in turn pulls in even more users. For a competitor, trying to break into a market dominated by a network effect is like trying to start a fire with a single wet match in a hurricane. While Warren Buffett was famously late to investing in technology companies, the principle of the network effect is visible in many of his classic investments, particularly in the world of payments. Let's examine the powerful, two-sided network effect of companies like Visa, MasterCard, or his own long-held American Express. Picture the very beginning of the charge card industry. For a credit card to be useful to a consumer, it needs to be accepted by a large number of merchants. But for a merchant to want to go through the trouble of accepting the card, there needs to be a large number of consumers who carry it. This is the classic chicken and egg problem that stifles most new networks. But once a company like Visa achieves critical mass, the magic begins. Every new cardholder who joins the Visa network makes that network slightly more valuable for every single merchant, from the corner store to the giant department store, because it represents another potential customer. And every new merchant that puts a Visa Accepted Here sticker on their door makes the network slightly more valuable for every single one of the billions of cardholders, because it represents another place they can use their card. This creates a powerful gravitational pull, New consumers are incentivized to get the card that is accepted everywhere. New merchants are incentivized to accept the card that everyone has. The leader's advantage grows exponentially. A new competitor, let's call them Payco, faces an impossible task. They can't attract consumers because no merchants accept their card. And they can't attract merchants because no consumers have their card. They are trapped in a negative feedback loop, while Visa is riding a positive one to global dominance. Buffett understood this dynamic intuitively. The value of the American Express network wasn't just in its brand of prestige, it was in the utility of the network itself. The more it grew, the stronger and more indispensable it became. He was buying into a system that was designed to grow and strengthen itself, a business that, by its very nature, crushed competition. This is the essence of a network effect moat. The product itself becomes the defense. The underlying psychological principle that fuels the network effect is the bandwagon effect, a close cousin of social proof. The bandwagon effect is our tendency to adopt certain behaviors or beliefs because many other people are doing so. It's a cognitive shortcut that assumes if so many people are using a service, it must be good. This is deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. In a tribal environment, straying from the group was dangerous. Sticking with the consensus, with what the majority was doing, was a survival strategy. In the modern world, this translates into our choices of technology and social platforms. Why are you on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn? It's not necessarily because their user interface is the pinnacle of design. It's because that's where everyone else is. Your friends, your family, your professional contacts are all on that network. To not be on it is to be socially or professionally excluded. This is reinforced by a mathematical principle known as Metcalfe's law, which states that the value of a telecommunications network is proportional to the square of the number of connected users of the system. In simple terms, a network of 10 people doesn't have 5 times the connections of a network of 2 people. It has exponentially more. A network of 1 billion people doesn't just feel a little more valuable than a network of 1 million. It feels like a different universe of value. The combination of our psychological desire to be part of the in-group and the mathematical reality of exponential value creation is what makes the network effect moat so powerful. It creates a natural monopoly, not one enforced by the government, but one enforced by the rational choices of its millions of users. So how do we create an applied mental model, a practical blueprint for identifying these powerful network effects in our own stock analysis? The process requires you to think like a systems engineer, not just a financial analyst. Step 1 is the critical question. Does the product or service become inherently better with each new user? Be rigorous here. A popular gym becomes crowded and worse with each new member. A popular restaurant has longer wait times. These are not network effects. But a marketplace like eBay becomes better because more sellers attract more buyers, which in turn attracts more sellers. A social media platform like Twitter becomes a more comprehensive source of real-time information with every new user who posts. If the answer to this first question is a resounding yes, you may have found a network effect business. Step 2. Analyze the market share dynamics. Network effect markets are almost always winner-take-all or winner-take-most. You will typically see one dominant player with 70% or more of the market share and a handful of small, struggling competitors. Think of Google in search or YouTube in video streaming. If you are analyzing an industry where the top 3 companies have 25, 20, and 18% market share respectively, it is highly unlikely that any of them possess a true network effect moat. The market itself is telling you that a competitor can easily gain a foothold. Step 3. Look for the liquidity of the network. This is especially important for marketplaces and social platforms. A network is liquid when there is a high probability of making a successful connection. On Uber, liquidity means you can get a ride within minutes, anytime, anywhere. On eBay, it means a seller of a niche collectible has a high chance of finding a buyer. A company that talks about and measures the liquidity of its network understands its own moat. By systematically applying this 3-part test, You can distinguish between companies that truly have this exponential advantage and those that merely have a lot of customers. This distinction is critical for any long-term investing portfolio strategy. The antithesis to the network effect business is the business that scales linearly. This describes the vast majority of enterprises in the world. Their growth is directly tied to their inputs. Consider a successful law firm. To double its revenue, it must roughly double its number of lawyers, office space, and support staff. A successful plumbing company that wants to expand into a new city must buy new trucks, rent a new facility, and hire a new team of plumbers. Their growth is additive, not multiplicative. There is no magical feedback loop where hiring the 100th plumber makes the first 99 plumbers more effective. In fact, large linear businesses often suffer from diseconomies of scale, becoming bloated with bureaucracy and inefficiency as they grow. These businesses are highly vulnerable to competition. A new law firm can open across the street and compete for the same clients. A new plumber with a single truck can compete for the same jobs. There is no inherent advantage that the large incumbent has over the small upstart, other than perhaps a recognizable local brand, which is a different and often weaker type of moat. The 99% of investors often fail to make this distinction. They see a company that is growing its revenue and profits. The plumbing company is adding new trucks. The law firm is hiring new partners, and they assume this growth is sustainable and indicative of a great business. They are mistaking simple expansion for a durable competitive advantage. They don't realize they are investing in a business that is on a hamster wheel, one that must constantly add more capital and more labor just to grow, and whose growth can be halted at any moment by a determined competitor. They are buying the workhorse, not the unicorn. The direct financial connection of a network effect is one of the most explosive and beautiful things to behold on a set of financial statements. It represents the pinnacle of scalable, profitable growth. The first and most stunning characteristic is the combination of rapid revenue growth and expanding operating margins. In the early days, a network effect business has to spend heavily to acquire the first users and build the network's infrastructure. This is the cold start problem, and the company may lose a lot of money. But once it hits critical mass, the financial model flips. Each new user costs very little to add to the network. The marginal cost is near zero, but they bring in new revenue, and more importantly, make the entire network more valuable, reinforcing the moat. This means that as revenues continue to grow exponentially, the costs grow much more slowly or linearly. This leverage causes the operating margins to expand dramatically over time. A mature network effect business like Meta, Facebook, or Google boasts operating margins of 30% or more, a level of profitability that is almost unimaginable for a linear business of their size. Second, they exhibit extraordinary capital efficiency, leading to a sky-high return on invested capital, ROIC. Because their primary asset is the intangible network of users, not physical factories or machinery, they can grow to an immense size with a relatively small capital base. They generate enormous amounts of free cash flow, cash from operations minus capital expenditures, because they don't need to constantly reinvest in heavy equipment to facilitate growth. This torrent of free cash flow can then be used to acquire potential competitors, invest in new technologies, or return to shareholders, all of which further entrenches their dominant position. By tracking the progression of operating margins and the level of free cash flow generation over several years, you can financially verify the existence and strength of a network effect. It is the signature of a business that has achieved escape velocity from the normal laws of competitive gravity. We arrive now at the fourth great economic moat, the most ancient and visceral form of competitive advantage. It is the fortress of the unassailable price king, the moat of a sustainable cost advantage. This is a business that, through some structural superiority, can produce and deliver its product or service at a consistently lower cost than any of its rivals. This advantage is a brutal, powerful weapon. It allows the company to either undercut all competitors on price, relentlessly gaining market share, or to match their prices and enjoy much fatter profit margins. It is a moat that grinds competitors into dust. For the ultimate case study in this moat, we must look to a company that Warren Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, adored, and that Buffett himself would later turn into one of Berkshire Hathaway's crown jewels. The company is Geico, the government employees' insurance company. From its very inception in the 1930s, Geico was built around a brilliant and disruptive structural cost advantage. In the traditional auto insurance model, the industry was dominated by companies that used a vast network of independent agents to sell policies. These agents were the face of the company, but they came at a huge cost, a significant commission on every policy sold and renewed, year after year. Geico's founder, Leo Goodwin, had a revolutionary idea. What if you bypassed the agents entirely and sold directly to the consumer via mail and telephone? This direct-to-consumer model was the company's foundational cost advantage. By eliminating the agent's commission, Geico could operate with a much lower expense structure than its competitors. This was not a temporary advantage that could be easily copied. It was a fundamental difference in the business model. This cost advantage created a virtuous cycle, a feedback loop of success that Buffett found irresistible. First, the lower costs allowed Geico to offer significantly lower premiums to its customers for the same or better coverage. Second, because they initially targeted a low-risk pool of government and military employees, and later, the safest drivers in the general population, their lower prices attracted the best customers. Third, having the safest drivers meant that Geico had fewer claims and lower payout costs than the industry average. Fourth, these lower claims costs further enhanced their cost advantage, allowing them to offer even more competitive prices. It was a perfect, self-reinforcing machine. While competitors were burdened with high commission costs and average-risk customers, Geico was a lean, efficient operator that cherry-picked the best drivers. Buffett first invested in Geico in 1951, when he was just a student of Ben Graham's at Columbia. He would later say he put more than half his net worth into the stock. Years later, in the mid-1970s, when Geico nearly went bankrupt due to a brief and disastrous period of mismanagement where they abandoned their underwriting discipline, Buffett stepped in again, seeing that the core cost advantage moat was still intact, just temporarily filled with mud. He invested heavily, and eventually, Berkshire Hathaway would acquire the entire company. He understood that the structural cost advantage was the real jewel, a durable business attribute that, if managed properly, could generate superior returns indefinitely. The psychological principle at play with a cost advantage moat is far more straightforward than the others. It preys on the cold, hard logic of rational choice theory. This theory posits that individuals, when making a decision, will weigh the costs and benefits of different options and choose the one that maximizes their self-interest. When a consumer is faced with two products that are essentially identical in quality and features, the rational choice is to buy the cheaper one. It's that simple. While brand loyalty can create an emotional override and switching costs can create a logistical barrier, in many industries, the final decision comes down to price. The company with the lowest sustainable cost structure can win this battle every single time. It creates a psychological pain point for the competition's customers, the feeling of being ripped off. Why would you pay 15% more for the exact same car insurance? Why would you buy a hammer for $10 at a local hardware store when the identical hammer is $7 at Walmart? The low-cost leader forces a constant, uncomfortable comparison in the mind of the consumer. It decommoditizes their own product by making a low price its unique and compelling feature. This doesn't mean it appeals only to the most price-sensitive shoppers. Even affluent customers feel a sense of satisfaction in getting a good deal. The psychological power of a cost advantage is in its universality. It is a language that every consumer understands, a compelling proposition that requires no emotional conditioning or complex explanation. It is simply the power of offering more for less. To build an applied mental model for spotting these cost advantages, you must become a student of business operations. It's not enough to know a company is cheap. You must understand why it can be cheap. This is a crucial part of a sophisticated financial analysis. Step 1. Identify the source of the advantage. There are 4 primary sources. The first is economies of scale. This is where a large company can negotiate better prices from suppliers or spread its fixed costs, like a giant distribution center, over a massive volume of sales. Walmart is the classic example. Their sheer size gives them immense bargaining power over their suppliers, a scale that no small retailer can match. The second is process advantage. This is a unique and superior way of doing things that is difficult to copy. The Toyota production system, with its focus on lean manufacturing and continuous improvement, allowed Toyota to produce higher quality cars at a lower cost for decades. The third is access to a unique, low-cost resource. This could be a mining company that owns a uniquely rich ore deposit, or a transportation company that owns a critical port. The fourth is a favorable geographic location, such as a gravel pit located just outside a rapidly growing city, giving it a massive transportation cost advantage over more distant competitors. Step 2. Test the durability of the advantage. Is this a temporary edge or a structural one? A tech company might have a cost advantage today because it has a more efficient software algorithm, but a competitor could develop a better one tomorrow. That is not durable. Walmart's vast, integrated supply chain, built over decades at a cost of hundreds of billions of dollars, is extremely durable. A patent on a manufacturing process is durable for a time, but it will expire. You must rigorously assess how difficult it would be for a well-funded competitor to replicate the cost advantage. Step 3. Look for the evidence in the numbers. A true cost advantage will be clearly visible in the financial statements. The company will consistently have higher gross and operating margins than its direct competitors. Compare the margin profile of the company you're analyzing with its top 3 rivals over a 10-year period. If it consistently leads the pack, you have found strong evidence of a sustainable cost advantage moat. The antithesis is the tragic story of the stuck-in-the-middle company. This is a business that has neither the lowest cost nor a differentiated product through branding or technology. It is strategically adrift in a sea of intense competition, and it is a terrible place to be. Think of a mid-tier department store from a bygone era, like Sears or JCPenney. They were not the cheapest option. That was Walmart. They did not offer a premium, curated shopping experience with top-tier brands. That was Nordstrom or specialized boutiques. They were stuck in the middle. They couldn't compete with Walmart on price because they lacked the scale and logistical prowess. They couldn't compete with premium retailers on service and selection because they lacked the brand cachet and high-margin structure to afford it. So what was their value proposition? It became increasingly unclear. They were squeezed from both ends. Low-cost retailers ate away at their price-sensitive customers, while high-end retailers peeled off their quality-sensitive customers. Their customer base hollowed out, their sales declined, and their massive physical store footprint became an anchor, not an asset. This is the fate of any business without a clear, competitive advantage. They are forced to engage in desperate, margin-destroying promotional activity just to get customers in the door. They are constantly reacting to the strategies of their more focused competitors. The 99% of investors often fall for these value traps. They see the beaten-down stock price of a once great company like Sears and think it's cheap. They mistake a cheap price for a good value. They fail to see that the business itself is fundamentally broken, that its moat has been filled in, and that the castle is being overrun from all sides. They are buying a melting ice cube, hoping it will magically refreeze. The direct financial connection of a cost advantage moat is a picture of beautiful, boring, relentless efficiency. It's less about explosive growth and more about consistent, superior profitability. As mentioned, the primary indicator is consistently higher profit margins, gross, operating, and net, than the industry average. This margin superiority is the moat made visible. It is the direct result of the lower cost structure. While competitors are struggling to break even, the low-cost leader is minting cash on every sale. This leads to the second key financial indicator, superior cash flow generation. Because of its higher margins and often efficient operations, the company produces more cash from its core business. This gives its management immense flexibility, a key element of any long-term portfolio strategy. They can use this cash to reinvest in technology to further lower their costs, creating a feedback loop. They can use it to pay down debt, strengthening the balance sheet. They can use it to acquire smaller competitors. Or, most powerfully, they can use it to initiate a price war. A low-cost leader can afford to lower prices to a level that would be ruinous for its high-cost rivals, driving them out of business and allowing it to capture their market share. This financial flexibility is a powerful weapon that makes the moat even wider over time. Finally, this efficiency often translates into a higher return on assets, ROA. The company is able to generate more profit from its asset base than its competitors can. By comparing the margins, cash flow statements, and return on assets of a company against its peers, you can quantitatively prove the existence of this powerful moat and understand the source of its enduring financial strength. This brings us to our fifth and final pillar, the one that underpins and protects all the others. The first four moats, intangible assets, switching costs, network effects, and cost advantages, are characteristics of a business. But a business is not a static entity. It is a dynamic organization run by human beings. And the quality of those human beings, their character, their intelligence, and their incentives, forms the ultimate moat. This is the pillar of the castle keepers. Visionary management with a talent for capital allocation. A great business with a wide moat can be damaged or even destroyed by foolish managers. Conversely, a good business can see its moat widened into a great one by brilliant leadership. For Warren Buffett, evaluating the people running the show is just as important as evaluating the business itself. His career is filled with stories of betting on the jockey as much as the horse. Perhaps no story better illustrates Buffett's focus on management than his acquisition of Nebraska Furniture Mart in 1983. This was not a deal born of complex spreadsheets or Wall Street investment bankers. It was a deal born of admiration for one of the most formidable business people America has ever produced, Rose Blumkin, known to all as Mrs. B. Mrs. B was a Russian immigrant who arrived in America unable to speak a word of English. In 1937, with a loan of $500, she started a small furniture store in the basement of her husband's shop in Omaha, Nebraska. Her business philosophy was brutally simple and ruthlessly effective. Sell cheap and tell the truth. She worked with a fanatical intensity, buying shrewdly, managing her costs with an iron fist, and passing the savings on to her customers. She built a business that was, in its own way, a fortress. Competitors, big and small, tried to compete with her on price and were consistently crushed. By the early 1980s, Nebraska Furniture Mart was the single largest home furnishing store in the nation, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in sales from a single location in Omaha. Buffett had been watching Mrs. B for decades. He saw not just a successful store, but a manager with a rare and powerful combination of traits. She was relentlessly focused on the customer. She understood the power of a low-cost operation, and most importantly, she possessed an absolute owner's mindset. This was her creation, her life's work. When Buffett finally approached her to buy the company, the negotiation was legendarily simple. He asked her what it was worth. She named a price, around $60 million. He agreed. He drafted a one-page contract. He did not ask for an audit of the company's books. He did not bring in a team of lawyers to conduct due diligence. He simply trusted Mrs. B. As he later explained, "I'd rather have a handshake with Mrs. B than a 300-page contract with some other people." Why? Because he knew her character. He knew she was honest, and he knew that she and her family, who would continue to run the business, would manage it with the same passion and intelligence as owners, not as hired hands. He wasn't just buying a store, he was buying a management culture, a legacy of smart capital allocation and operational excellence. He was investing in the castle keepers, confident they would protect and widen the moat for generations to come. The underlying psychological principle at work here is the agency problem, and Buffett's search for managers who have solved it. In finance, the principal-agent problem describes the inherent conflict of interest that arises when one party, the agent or CEO, is expected to act in the best interests of another party, the principal or shareholders. Most publicly traded companies are run by agents. These professional managers may have goals that are not perfectly aligned with the long-term owners of the business. They might be focused on short-term stock price performance to maximize the value of their stock options. They might engage in empire building, making flashy, oversized acquisitions to increase the size of the company and their own prestige, even if those deals destroy shareholder value. They might be afraid to take calculated risks or make long-term investments that depress quarterly earnings for fear of angering Wall Street analysts. Buffett seeks to sidestep this problem entirely by investing in businesses run by principals, people who think and act like long-term owners. These are often founders, or families who have run the business for generations, or managers who have a significant portion of their own net worth invested alongside the shareholders. This alignment of incentives taps into a powerful psychological drive, the pride of ownership and the desire to build an enduring legacy. An owner-operator isn't thinking about the next quarter, they're thinking about the next decade. They aren't trying to impress Wall Street. They're trying to build a stronger, more profitable business. They treat the company's capital as if it were their own hard-earned savings, allocating it with extreme care and discipline. By focusing on managers with this owner's mindset, Buffett isn't just getting a skilled executive, he's getting a steward, a guardian of the castle, whose interests are perfectly aligned with his own. To create an applied mental model for evaluating management, you must become a business detective, reading between the lines of corporate communications to understand the character and incentives of the leaders. This is a key part of any serious approach to wealth building. Step 1. Read a decade's worth of shareholder letters. Don't just skim them, study them. Does the CEO write with clarity and honesty? Do they candidly admit their mistakes, or do they blame poor results on external factors? A leader who takes responsibility for failures is a leader you can trust. As Buffett says, the best CEOs are the ones who have a clear, simple, and consistent message. Look for a letter that you can actually understand, one that explains the business as if you were a partner. Step 2. Scrutinize their track record of capital allocation. This is the CEO's most important job. How have they used the company's profits? Have they made smart, synergistic acquisitions at reasonable prices, or have they engaged in reckless empire building? Have they repurchased company stock? Crucially, when did they repurchase it? A management team that buys back shares when the stock is cheap is demonstrating a keen sense of value. One that buys it back at all-time highs is often just trying to prop up the stock price. Look for a consistent history of decisions that have increased the per-share intrinsic value of the business over the long run. Step 3. Examine the compensation structure. The proxy statement, a document that most investors ignore, is a goldmine of information. It details how the top executives are paid. Are they rewarded for short-term metrics like stock price performance, or long-term ones like growth in return on equity or invested capital? Is their compensation plan simple and easy to understand, or is it a complex mess of jargon designed to obscure huge payouts? You want to see a compensation plan that ties the manager's financial fate directly to the long-term success of the underlying business, not the short-term whims of the stock market. This three-step analysis of communication, capital allocation, and compensation will give you a remarkably clear picture of the quality and alignment of the castle keepers. The antithesis is the all-too-common story of the value-destroying, empire-building CEO. This is the manager who is a master of corporate politics and self-promotion, but a disaster at capital allocation. They are obsessed with size, not profitability. Their goal is to be on the cover of business magazines and to preside over a sprawling global empire. The history of business is littered with their calamitous decisions. The most famous example is the disastrous 2000 merger of AOL and Time Warner. At the height of the dot-com bubble, AOL, the hot internet company, acquired Time Warner, the venerable media giant, in a deal that was hailed at the time as a visionary fusion of new and old media. The CEO of AOL, Steve Case, engineered the deal to create the biggest media company in the world. It was a monumental failure. The cultures clashed, the promised synergies never materialized, and as the dot-com bubble burst, the value of the combined company evaporated, destroying hundreds of billions of dollars in shareholder wealth in what is widely considered the worst merger of all time. This is the path of the 99% investor. They are swayed by charismatic, headline-grabbing CEOs. They get excited by big, transformative mergers. They buy the story without looking at the underlying economics or the track record of the managers involved. They invest in companies run by agents who are more interested in building monuments to their own egos than in building per-share value for the owners. They entrust their capital to castle keepers who leave the gates wide open and spend the kingdom's treasury on lavish, ill-conceived follies. The direct financial connection between great management and financial performance is the ultimate measure of a company's quality. It is the synthesis of all the other factors. Excellent management and disciplined capital allocation manifest in one key area: a consistently high and rising return on equity, ROE, and return on invested capital, ROIC, over a very long period of time. ROE measures how much profit a company generates for each dollar of shareholder equity. ROIC measures the return the company earns on all the capital it employs, both equity and debt. A company that can consistently generate returns of 15% or more, year after year, through different economic cycles, is almost certainly run by a skilled management team that is operating within a strong economic moat. This is the ultimate sign of a quality business. High and stable returns mean the company is not just profitable, but it is also reinvesting those profits intelligently to generate even more profit in the future. This is the engine of compounding. Furthermore, great management leads to a fortress-like balance sheet. They are prudent with debt, using it sparingly and strategically, not to juice short-term returns. They maintain a strong cash position, giving them the flexibility to survive downturns and pounce on opportunities when others are forced to sell. When you are doing your financial analysis, don't just look at 1 year's numbers. Look at the 10 or 15-year trend. A history of high returns on capital and a conservative balance sheet is the financial fingerprint of a superior management team. It is the ultimate proof that the castle keepers are not just minding the store, they are master architects, constantly reinforcing the walls and expanding the kingdom's wealth. You have just navigated the 5 great defenses of the corporate castle. You've seen how the emotional pull of an intangible brand can create a fortress in the mind. You've understood how the golden handcuffs of switching costs can lock in customers and create a river of predictable, recurring revenue. You have witnessed the exponential power of the network effect, a force that creates winner-take-all dynasties. You have learned to respect the brutal efficiency of a sustainable cost advantage, a moat that grinds competitors into submission. And you have appreciated the crucial role of the castle keepers, the aligned and intelligent management who act as true stewards of shareholder capital. This is not just abstract theory. This is a comprehensive mental model, a powerful lens through which you can now view the entire world of business and investing. You have acquired the ability to look at any company and ask the single most important question for any long-term investor: where is the moat? By internalizing this framework, you have already separated yourself from the 99% who chase fleeting headlines and hot tips. You have taken a monumental step toward becoming a true business analyst, a partner in durable, high-quality enterprises. But the journey to becoming a master of your financial destiny is a layered one. The framework you have just mastered is one of 2 foundational pillars in the temple of value investing. You now possess the powerful skill of identifying an indestructible business franchise, of finding the corporate castle with an unbreachable moat. This is the quality half of the equation. It answers the question what to buy. Yet a crucial piece of the map remains hidden. A great business can be a terrible investment if you pay too high a price for it. The second, equally critical pillar of this entire philosophy is valuation. It answers the question when to buy. Knowing how to identify the moat is essential, but knowing how to calculate its intrinsic value and then having the discipline to buy it only when it is offered at a significant discount, What Buffett calls a margin of safety is what separates the successful investor from the successful business historian. The mental model you have just built is the powerful engine, but the principles of valuation are the steering wheel and the brake. Without them, even the most powerful engine can lead you off a cliff. The video that is now appearing on your screen is not a random suggestion. It is the other half of the map. It is the bridge from identifying quality to paying the right price. It is the missing link that connects the what with the when. Within that next lesson lies the framework for valuation, for calculating intrinsic value, and for mastering the discipline of the margin of safety. It is the final piece required to complete your mental arsenal, to transform you from someone who can spot a great company into someone who can profit from it over a lifetime. The choice to click is not about watching another video. It is a declaration of your intent. It is a commitment to move beyond the surface level and master the complete system. The casual observer is content with knowing about the moat. The serious architect of their own wealth understands that they must also know how to value it. Continue your ascent. Complete the blueprint. The key to the treasury is waiting.